Yeah, well, Prof here, and after doing sunny back-to-back videos on the issues around the TPM firmware updates that are supposed to come with your BIOS updates that are not available, preventing me from playing Call of Duty, I have gotten... You guys might have seen that stack a while. Well, now there's this stack, and there's that stack. We got some stuff we gotta do. Not in a bad way. I just... You know... You and me and you, gotta take care of and look at some things. Nothing horrible. If you want to see my new keyb, there you go. There's the Agar EC. Check it out. We've got like a couple unboxing videos of the kit and the accessories. Took a bit over 2 hours to put together, and it was really easy. I don't even know if that's necessarily building a keyboard. Like, it is technically, but like, geez, that is. You know how you got like the Gundam hand painted? Those are like the Master Collection or whatever, right? And then you got the ones that like snap and click together that are already the correct color. Yeah, that's the difference there. The keyboard is very much snap and click together. Not that that's bad. I had a working computer. Yeah, computer. Keyboard. So what this is, probably hard to tell. Knurled thumb screws. Well, what is this about? Some of you had reached out in previous Gerber EAB videos, as well as in some of the other EDC knife videos, that if I had seen the thumb screw or the screw mod for this. I actually cannot find, maybe there's one Reddit article. Maybe this is just because Google search on Reddit is shit ever since the AIification of things. I can only really find one Reddit page talking about it. There are some knife forums that talk about it, but nobody shares pictures, or those pictures have been lost to the depths and specifically PhotoBucket, because they're old enough that those would have been done through PhotoBucket, right? For the Gerber EAB, I don't have my original EAB. That is in the car still. But I do have the two EAB Lite and one that predates that. This was the one I was rocking in Geek Squad before I got the EAB. I don't know, we went over it in the video on the newer EAB Slim. They make like a fuller handled one. Switched to that before eventually getting my TUKK XL. I have it, themed for Geek Squad back when I was working there. But this is one of my original ones. Any of you can probably make this. This is literally just a piece of G10 bolted into the stainless steel, right? So if you wanted something like that, yes, here it's under that screw, and I don't know if the standard screw would make it. So cut it out around the screw for all I care, right? But they've, from my understanding, they've literally just, you can see it right there, they have just drilled and tapped into this layer of stainless steel. So, well, what is this about? Well, it is about the fact that many of you have said, get the screw mod. And like I said, the issue with that statement is I can't find the specific one. There might be one Reddit thread where it's mentioned. And I had an idea. As soon as, like, I'd seen some of this in the past online, and I'm like, oh, so they're using what's called a socket cap screw, or or a socket head screw. Trying to think. Yeah, that's the wrong kind over there. Let's take you over to the PC building. No, that's a hex head screw. Hex head screw. We got some flat screws. We got some. I don't know that any of those are gonna be what we're looking for. I think we probably gotta look in some of these more random bins toward the bottom where I don't have dedicated. That's my. See that that's definitely screws, not. Oh, there you go. That's definitely screws, not thermal paste, right? I don't know that I have any. I don't often use cap head screws. Or I should say like socket cap screws. This is a round head screw. There you go. It has a round head. McMaster car. Weird threaded stuff. Standoffs. Those are thumb screws. More thumb screws. More thumb screws. Oh, there's another Allen. Both like socket cap screws, and these are Allen type. I use these for radiators because they can actually go into the fan. Most of my socket cap screws are probably from keyboards. Those are definitely screws. There's my custom ordered fan screws off of eBay. Used to order them from Performance PCs. So they wanted 30 cents a screw. Can you believe that? I don't know that we have any. This area's gotta get a wee bit more cleaned up. Let's see if the KMAC Happy over here has what we need. Nope. It's the kind we just had. Well, it's that kind. Can't see it out of there. I'd have to get a screwdriver in hand. But they're basically cylindrical. The head is cylindrical. There's a Allen in there. And realistically, because you don't need to put that blade that tight, the Allen should not become an issue. Look what the cats have done to my poor baggies of parts. These are all the parts needed to rebuild the KMAC Happy under there. They've only been there for, I don't know, probably better part of a decade at this point. Ay, ay, ay. But on the socket cap screw, basically, okay, you're supposed to use a coin, but I never carry coins. So that's why this is annoying. This was kind of designed back when people still carried coins. So I just use a screwdriver. I often have like a little flat blade on my keys anyway. There you go. This is a very small, I believe it's an M6. I believe it's a 3mm. So that comes out of there with the socket cap screw, right? Theoretically, the head sits in there, right? Sits in there, not on there, in there. And then it sits proud enough because the head of the screw is big enough that you can use it as a thumb stud to open it, right? It is kind of a shit thumb stud because you actually want the thumb stud right about there. But I thought I would try it because the other thing it does is because it gives you a little bit of a screw that protrudes. You know, so you imagine a taller head than that. And they have knurling on the outside a lot of the times, right? It would allow you to undo this by hand. Now, I haven't driven over. I could order some up from McMaster-Carr, but I don't necessarily know the threads. Also, from what I've read online, you still need to. They still don't fit, especially on an M6. It's actually too big for this, so you actually have to grind down the bottom part of the screw. And I may get some just to show you that it does work, or if you implement it the way that this is, this guy's doing it. That you may not have to loosen the grind down the head of the screw so it fits. Now here's one thing. See, it is loose. The blade has some play side to side. That'll come into this in a second here, right? But I would like to point out that if you actually screw this down properly, there is no play. There's some play in the actual, because I've had this thing for so long. There's a little bit of play in here, so it'd be nice to be able to tighten it. But of course, Gerber uses a semi-proprietary way of affixing this rather than just like an Allen or Torx. So we're going to pull this out because, you know, we're dealing with that screw right now. We're doing mods, okay? With how bad a lot of these newly introduced knives are, maybe modding your EAB is the better way to go. People have been doing this a long time. I guess I just never had an issue with the screw because I don't need to quick change an EDC that often. It is super nice though. Guys, if you use one of these on the daily, right? Get you one of these. Boom, done. Hold this. Wow, look, it comes out. Put it back in. Slide that forward, back, done. You know? And there are some other ones I've shown. Like Bob the Box Cutter. As well as the Palmer. I'm not a huge fan of the Palmer. Better in its cheaper plexi or acrylic form. So what is in here? Little thumb screws. And apparently, as I was researching this, I found out via the reviews on Amazon that people were using these little brass thumb screws, knurled thumb screws, and I think they're from like a brand I would actually buy stuff from already. Like it was like, oh, I trust them to actually make this a functional object. There you go. They're little brass thumb screws, and they're M6, right? A little bit longer than what we have here. So I should probably measure that. If I want to know how long of a screw I need, right? Because this screw doesn't protrude out of the back. That's what happens when you get a screw that's too long, right? So if we pop this blade out temporarily just to be safe, we can thread this in the ass end. And you're like, what's the point of doing that? Well, it's just checking the threads to make sure they work, basically. Right? So this is an option, apparently. I didn't see, like, though I saw a number of people in the comments commenting that this was a solution for this, right? I never found the source of where they were finding that. Because if you ask me, that's not a solution for that. And I could kind of tell that when it's not long enough. Here's the other thing I would like to point out. Even if this was long enough and you managed to screw it in back here, right? I want to give it a try to see, you know, what's up. Now that does protrude fairly far out from the side, right? But it would make it easy. I've seen some of those, I was going to say U-green knives. No, Olight knives that have things pretty similar to this that are sticking out pretty far. Here's the issue. Because this doesn't go into that hole, but sits on top of the hole, right? Doesn't clamp the blade. Now, some people in the original, even the original review of these say that you have to use a different blade, a non-standard blade. Well, it is standardized, but it is not the standard utility blade. All right. And this solved a question that you may have seen in another one of my videos. I keep thinking, all right, I mean, I know I bought these for something, but what the heck did I buy these Stanley extra heavy duty utility blades for? I tried to look for a year on these, but old enough where my Scotch tape is discoloring. That's how old they are. I can show you why now, why I have these. And when they say 50% thicker, it literally feels like you're picking up, I know that would be 100% thicker if it feels like you're picking up 2, but it seriously does feel like feels like you're picking up 2. It is significantly thicker. I don't know how well that comes across on camera. But this is actually what you're supposed to use for, there's still a play. But these heavy duty Stanleys, there's no gap. On the blade there. Whereas if you take a standard blade, like you can almost fit 2. Right? A non-issue if you ask me though, because once again you can tighten it down. But I'm guessing that is why I bought, now that I know that this is the case where these EABs take these, they do feel more sturdy. But that is when not screwed in. Like that is in there solidly, right? Whereas this guy, when you do that, rattles about, like, right? So the other thing mentioned was if you use this thumbscrew mod, you have to use, and people are like, oh, I hate having to use the extra heavy duty utility blades with the EAB. I don't know what you guys are on about, because yes, this does fit better. Like they've went to accommodate this, but as long as you put a standard one, this is a DeWalt carbide actually still. Or sorry, a Stanley carbide, not a DeWalt. They later on changed those from Stanley to DeWalt. And then now I don't even know if they brand them carbide. They might brand them like extra long life or something. I purposely bought a carbide one when they started getting a little bit harder to find. Look, that is, you're bending the blade and this hinge of this knife before this feels loose. This is a freaking screw. So this is a bit of a bummer. Maybe I will order longer ones of those to see if this actually does work, but I don't think it will. So let's put this screw in, right? Does that feel a little bit better? I guess. But if you just give this guy just a little with a standard blade, you don't really have to worry. The other thing mentioned though is if you're using any of these solutions, because this original one basically clamps the little U shape at the top down to this back plate back here, right? So if you were to use this guy, for example, and hold it in here, no matter how tight you make this, That's not acceptable, in my opinion. If I want that, you get the Chinese knockoff EAB. 6 for $20. And it has quick release. Ta-da! Let's try a thicker blade. Maybe the rattling will fix with a thicker blade. Or the thicker blade won't even fit. Yep. Thicker blade won't even fit. See? So some people might tell you, oh, you need the... If people are still saying that, and I've seen comments that you need the extra heavy-duty stem, yes, it does fit better. Yes, I have other Gerber utility blade knives, and to make it more of a utility blade or more universally functional, these blades do stand up to being used more like a normal blade versus these, especially when you get the carbide or the high carbon steel, because they are the brittle. Basically, the harder you make it, and the more you have it retain the edge, and this happens with knives too, like normal sharpening knives that you have to sharpen, the more brittle it becomes. So here's the thing. Even if this worked this way, which you would want it to be on this side screwing through that gap, right? You're still going to have this rattle because nothing is actually pushing, even the heavy duty blade, nothing is pushing it down into the back there. What I have found though is somebody actually has an Etsy shop, and they actually sell these on eBay as well, is thumb screws that instead of being wide like this, right, fit in the hole and have knurling just on the sides like this. However, with my hand, it does not look like it stands up very proud. So I have a feeling they're reusing thumb screws from something else. Because the best way, if this fit down in the hole, right, or imagine this screw, if you had a crisscross pattern, you could just push your finger down and turn because it would grip up when you did that. It would work pretty good, but keep an eye out. I may have bought, and I will double check, I may have bought the wrong length of these to try this out. I don't think, though, even if I use the quote-unquote extra heavy-duty correct blades, which now I'm now realizing why I've had these in my toolbox for, like, you know, long enough to make Scotch tape yellow, right? Even if you manage to get this guy in there and don't lose it, it won't matter because you're still not holding the blade down. Now, something you could do to help with that is like washers or a spacer that would push from the underside of this thumb screw onto like the spot where this screw goes in. You know, like there, right? But then you're gonna have to like not lose that piece. Like that's another piece you're gonna have to keep track of, right? I don't know. If you guys know which video or forum this specific one came from as a recommendation, even though I might have somehow gotten the wrong length, and I'll double check, please let me know, because I feel like whoever gave that recommendation is bad and wrong. I also saw videos on YouTube recommending they got the correct type screw, which is that socket head screw, right? And no, it's not socket because you use a socket. It's a socket head screw because it fits into a socket. However, they didn't mill it down, and or some of them even put it through this side. And then because they couldn't get something to go in there, they put a nut on this side. Now, will that might functionally work? Now you have to undo a nut and a screw. Realistically, you just want to replace this thing that uses a coin, or if you have like a pocket pry bar, or, you know, bottle opener, or you name it. There's look at that. That is in there, sturdy as. Like there's a little tiny itty bitty, like, but that is in there. Like I said, I've used these since I've never had any of the one I didn't ever have. And what I found out is the one Gerber EAB I have never had is the one that got recalled. That apparently it's not the EAB Lite, but the original, where people would like cut themselves with it due to the design. And I can't even find pictures of it to see what makes it look different than the fixed one that doesn't make people cut themselves. So, and you can see, like, this says in our, like, look at that. It's got, and this has far less wobble in it because it's a much newer one. And even though I've used it every day at the Geek Squad, it's still got probably 5 years or more on my G10. So what would help here is if I could tighten down, see if you see this. And yes, you're like, oh, that's an aftermarket one. No, no, no. You can actually still find the Amazon listing, or at least references to the Amazon listing where this one was sold. This was an official Gerber product. The other thing is, if you buy these, Gerber has lifetime warranties on a lot of their stuff, including these. They will send you replacement screws because these are coin screws, meaning like you're supposed to. That's why it's extra wide and why the correct size flathead, like Weeble Wobble's in there, because you're supposed to use like a dime or a penny. They get all sorts of messed up. I let them know, and in the past they have sent me like packs of 3 to 5 screws when I've needed just one. Yeah, you can see this one's gotten a little weak where it pops open too. There, whereas this one does not do that nearly as much. It's just years and years of use until I got my TUKK. Technically, you saw a TUKK HD, but in my TUKK XL, my original copper one is, yep, you can see that. And it doesn't open, so it's not dangerous. Like, I would argue the Crescent one version of this that's updated is actually dangerous, because if it opens that far, it's already poking out of the bottom. Whereas something like this, even if it opens up that far, it's not dangerous. Well, I was going to make a couple videos for you guys, but Mrs. Peasley Marie has shown up. Yeah, you just jumped up the backside of the chair again and landed on my shoulder. What are you doing? Oh, yeah? What time is it? Oh, we're overdue by an hour. Yeah, we're overdue by an hour. So let me know. I probably, like, on this, if you've seen somebody, maybe you guys that are Gerber EAB fans out there have seen who did the mod with this specific thumb screw. I can leave it in the description. It is not long enough. I will try to find the correct length. I need another probably 2 or 3 millimeters on there. 3 millimeters seems short. A lot of other places for the cap head, or sorry, that's not a cap head, it's the socket head screw. We're saying 6 millimeters, and that looks about right, because I only got about halfway through. So we did, however, answer the mystery on being attacked of why. Why do I have a 5-pack of extra heavy-duty blades? Well, the answer was I probably didn't know. Like, some people were saying that they were the correct ones in there, or maybe even Gerber themselves is saying that's what you should be using it. And I probably bought a 5-pack to see if it was any better, and I was like, wow, these cut wars. Peace, I'm out of here. And I'm actually out of here. Hopefully you hit that subscribe button and like, and we'll see you in future videos. I do plan to get my hands on one of the actual aftermarket aluminum thumb screws that people have for these Gerber EABs, as well as potentially get a socket head screw and modify it so it does work as people intended. Because though with how cheap these aftermarket thumb screws are that are aluminum, and how expensive random hardware at the hardware store is getting, you might be better off just buying the pre-made one. But maybe you've already got an M6 kicking around. So we'll give it a shot once I get around to picking one up. Any of your mods, questions, comments down below. I've always loved the Gerber EAB. Like I said, I've had one since basically I didn't have the recalled one, which would have been the launch one, but all of these have seen, except for my black one, my black Lite that I just picked up from Walmart the other year, just because I'm like, ooh, a black one, and it's $10. Sure. 1 year I actually gifted EAB Lites to every one of the male members in my family. And you're like, only male members? What about the female ones? They got something else. Don't you worry. My grandpa was actually using it as a money clip. Because that is, for those wondering, this clip on the back is actually not a belt clip. Though I used it as such, it is a money clip. Which is less and less common these days. Hopefully you'll see in the future videos. And Paisley, can you put up with doing one more video? Maybe? She doesn't look too enthused, does she?